Hello and welcome. We are live on LinkedIn, we're live on Instagram, and we are live on YouTube. This is the Jonny Ross Fractional CMO podcast. I'm your host, Jonny Ross. And today we have a truly inspiring guest, Sandy Domingos-Shipley. You all right, Sandy?
I am. How are you? How's everyone?
Yeah, really good. Thank you. Really excited to be talking about your story and the book that you've just written. But before we dive into our discussion, I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the passing of Rob Burrow, a rugby league legend and true inspiration to many. His courage and spirit have touched countless lives, and he'll be deeply missed. Sandy, I know you're a massive rugby fan. I don't even think the word massive explains it, but a huge rugby fan. This must be a significant moment for you as well. And I just wanted to see if you wanted to share a few words about Rob and his impact on the rugby community.
Yeah, so I mean, I started following rugby league after he had retired, but a lot of people who were trying to teach me about rugby league always spoke about Rob. But for me, what got me was his fighting spirit, and knowing that there is no cure for me, but I want to do something for the future generations who might, get this disease, etc. And having that determination. And in Canada, we've got someone called Terry Fox, who in his early 20s, was trying to come up with fundraising for a cure for cancer, etc. And there was so many similarities to Rob's character with Terry that it just attracted me to him and his story. And, what he's done is going to change how things are perceived for the illness with a new medical center coming up. I mean, what he's done is going to be life-changing, definitely.
Yeah. Certainly leave a very large legacy and very fond memories.
Yeah.
Listen, let's focus on today's show. Sandy is a renowned business strategist, entrepreneur, and the author of the new book, How to Build a World-Class Business One Brick at a Time. With over 20 years of experience in helping businesses streamline their operations and focus on quality, Sandy has a unique talent for turning complex concepts into actionable insights. I just wanted to share a tiny bit of Sandy's journey, which is fascinating as it is motivating. So you're originally from Canada. You made a bold move to the UK with just 2 suitcases and a dream. Over the years, you've not only built a successful career, but also a thriving business. Your book is a culmination of your extensive experience providing valuable insights into customer focus, leadership, and efficient business processes. You're passionate about helping SMEs grow sustainably and efficiently, and your approach is practical, down to earth, and incredibly effective. Certainly, I was just talking about in the green room about when I've read the book. It's, I find it so actionable and so easy to read, so easy to understand. Listen, I'm thrilled to have you on the show and to share your journey and talk about the new book and provide some actionable tips for building a world-class business. So welcome again, Sandy.
Thanks for the invite, and thanks for giving me a chance to talk about the book. It definitely was the hardest thing I did. Moving to the UK and raising 3 kids was so much easier. But thanks a lot, Jonny.
That says a lot. So tell us about your career journey and how you ended up writing the book then.
So I'll just kind of explain my background. Obviously, I'm from Toronto, Canada, for those who don't know. And at the age of 21, I woke up on my birthday and decided I'm leaving Canada, and left with 2 suitcases and £1,000. Now, at the age of 21, I was a translator interpreter for Portuguese. So I did a lot of work in there, and I worked in legal, in real estate. So when I moved over, I thought, I'll go to a country where they speak English. Why not? And I did lots of things. I did graphic designing, office management, partnerships. But the one thing I did struggle is that everyone judged me for not having an academic background throughout my career because I didn't have a degree. So I kind of finished high school. That's a long story in itself. And I dropped out of college. And I really struggled when it comes to academic formatting of teaching. But I never knew why. And I kind of knew that there was always something wrong with me. And I don't mean it in a negative way, but I just thought, how can I learn 5 languages by the age of 18 on my own, but I couldn't read a page on a newspaper or whatever? It just didn't make any sense. But throughout my career, I always worked hard and I always found innovative ways to do something better. And then that led to another promotion. So I kind of had one job that led to so many promotions within the same organization because of the way I would work. And so when my son, my eldest, was diagnosed with dyslexia in year 4, I got assessed at the same time. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to check, why not? The day she told me that I had dyslexia was probably the happiest day of one of my top 5s, because it was an answer to what I couldn't understand. But then I didn't know what that meant in terms of, my son got really upset because he thought it was a disability. He saw it as a disability, that it was going to stop him from getting anywhere. And he was really struggling. What am I going to do with my life? So, when I was trying to tell Louis what I've achieved, despite not knowing I had dyslexia, despite the challenges, moving to another country, he wasn't taking that. He said, Mom, you're just saying that because you're my mom, which as a parent is the hardest thing to hear, because you're pouring your heart out with truth. And he just wasn't listening. He really did think that he was going to get nowhere, because people around him were very academic, doing lots of things, and schools are very pressured on the grades and so on. So I said to my husband, I need to do something, because I can't just sit here seeing Louis think that he's not going to get somewhere. So I just said, I'm going to start a business. And he's like, I don't know, I'll figure it out. So I came up with a company name, just made one up. And I, for the first year, just networked. And all I did in that first year was talk to people. I didn't tell them what I did. I just wanted to talk to people. And I realized early in that people didn't want to know me because I didn't have a big organization behind me like I did before. And that was a big learning curve. When you go from the public sector to the private sector, like you're starting from ground zero. And so I gave myself time to just not put pressure on me, just talk to people, meet people, because guess what? You grow your business by people. It's not necessarily what you do, or not necessarily who you know, it's who you are. It's who you are as an individual that will get you far. And then I met somebody, again, at this point, I had no idea what I was going to do. And I met somebody at a networking event, and he's like, oh, what did you do before, before you went on your own? And I said, well, I did this, I did that. I says, oh, so have you heard of ISO? I said, sorry, what's ISO? He says, are you sure? Because everything you've literally just explained to me aligns with 9001 quality management system. I'm like, really? So he said, do look into that. So I did that, did the lead auditors course. And I sat there going, so it was 5-day really intensive course. And I did that. And I'm like, doesn't everyone think this way? So I found that whole week was nothing new, apart from clause numbers, which for me was horrendous. The principles of best practice within the framework is how I've been operating in the first place since I've been working. So I found it naturally easy to grasp because there was nothing new. And that's how it all started.
And you've taken now 9001 and used the framework and the principles and sort of taken away some of the technical aspects of it to ultimately bring those best practices for a world-class business. That's what you've done, isn't it?
Yeah. So I tried to implement it with a very business-centric approach, not a compliance or standard approach, because I think that just makes people worry and they find the whole implementation very difficult because it's like you're interpreting a new language. But what I did during COVID, because that's where obviously we met, is I was trying to figure out a way to explain to people what is a standard, what is it? And Lego came about. And I remembered growing up, being an only child, I used to use Lego to break things down in my head. When it was too complicated, whether it was a personal problem, I used to kind of do that to kind of make it more manageable. And I remember doing a conversation with somebody, and he couldn't understand what we were doing. And my son was playing Lego on the floor, and I thought, let me try this. So what I was saying to him is that the standard is like the Lego manual. It's a guide to tell you how to get from, the starting point to the end result of what you want. And every business in the world, whether you're Google, my business, or a printing agency, we all have the same core foundations, like Lego. Every set in the world has got the core. The difference is how it's being used. So HR, finance, they all have the same, customer service. The difference is how we use it. And so if we implement the framework like a Lego manual with purpose, with focus, with the end objective, then it becomes just the way of working as opposed to doing something because the standard says you have to do it. And that's the thing, is you have to give everything purpose, or in this day and age when businesses are so busy, if there is no purpose, people won't follow through. And that's what I try to do.
And it's amazing how many businesses start and don't either don't know their purpose or don't realize the power of having a purpose. And it must have taken me a good 5 years within my own business to realize that there actually was a point to visions, values, missions, purpose. Because in those first 5 years, I thought, well, this is all a waste of time. And it's just a waste of my time putting words on paper. But actually, the difference that can make is powerful. You also talked about people, and you're absolutely right. People buy from people. It's about showing personality. People buy from people they like, and so I love that you just naturally went into that networking environment in that first year of your own business, because you totally nailed it. It is about people fully.
It is, and it's the same with your staff. Treat them like that. People spend more time at work than they do with their own families. So if you don't give them purpose and bring them along the journey, they're just going to think that they're just there 9 to 5 and they go. Obviously there's some people that are happy with that. And as long as you accept that and acknowledge that, focus on the ones that do want that purpose. And there's been a lot of research about the new generation of staff coming through, that actually will spend time with purpose. They want to work with organizations that have purpose, that makes them feel part of that purpose. When companies have all these ambitions and everything else, they don't really tell staff how far along they are. They don't tell them how they've contributed to them. And therefore, they just feel like they're churning work without anything. They don't understand how they feel part of it.
Yeah. I was honored to have been invited to your book launch, which was fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. And particularly interested in the interview that you did. And you talked about how when you were putting the idea of the book together, I mean, this was over a number of years as well. It was a lot of it was around using hundreds of Post-it notes. And I was just wondering how that evolved and into a book, and whether that had an influence on the structure of the book at all.
Yeah, so the reason I did Post-it notes initially, I never wanted to write a book, never thought I could, because obviously with being dyslexic and words is not I'm good at speaking, but not necessarily writing. My problem is I forget what I've decided, or I forget the solutions I've come up with before because of how my brain, I just know how it works now. And at the time I thought, you know what? Every time I come up with a solution unique to this client, I'll just write it down. And just in case it comes up again, or there's something similar, because when I problem solve for clients, I never use the same solution to somebody else, because there's a lot of things that are different, but I will use it as a foundation to start building something unique for them. And so I just started writing them as a reminder to myself what I've done when I was on site, or something came up as an audit, idea or whatever. And I just had this build up. And one day my business mentor was like, what are you going to do with them? I'm like, I've got no idea. So I've got them, but I don't know what to do. And I'm surprised I kept them, because I hate clutter. And it was this big folder full of just Post-it notes, random Post-it notes. And then I was speaking to my copywriter who, and she said, your ebook's been so popular that I created during COVID, and a lot of people have been asking for more of it, that she said, why don't you use those Post-it notes? So I said, well, I don't even know where I've gotten them, because I was just doing them as they were coming. There was no structure. It was just whenever something came through, I'd put it in there. And then I was starting to distribute them in terms of categories. And I realized, actually, I've got enough here to start something. And so with my copywriter, she did the framework. Finding somebody that understands your brain, like my copywriter does, it helps. because she gives me calm when I might not be. And so she can kind of see, where I should go. And that's what we did. We worked together on the framework. And then that's how I started putting more content into it. But yeah, like I said, moving to this country and 3 kids was so much easier.
I like the idea how you use the Post-it notes to create categories, and that I think led into the chapters. And one of the chapters I want to focus on is marketing, but I'm going to come on to that shortly, because I'm going to start with one of the early chapters, which is around customer focus. So I think chapter 1, customer focus, you emphasize the importance of aligning business strategy with customer needs. Why is that crucial, and what are some of the practical steps a business can do to achieve that?
Yeah, so what I've noticed with a lot of businesses, no matter what size it's been, is that people forget sometimes who they're selling to. They're so eager to either copy a competitor because they're doing really well, or they're so chasing the money that sometimes they forget who they're actually selling to. And, and so trying to really embed a customer-centric culture where it is very obvious and, continuous research, always looking at that, embedding a customer journey mapping is very important, because it really tells you that you really do understand, because customers are very fickle at these days. And if you don't, the way we were because you and I are customers, but yeah, people forget that we ourselves are customers. So when we look at customers, we don't actually reflect on what would we be like. Are we a customer to a product or service that we're selling to? If we don't have a map and reflect that map, and how we were 10 years ago is not how we are now in terms of buying powers and so on. Guess what? These things make us more powerful than we've ever been. If we don't really understand and put that at the core of everything we do, then the strategy will be a waste of time. And the other thing is measuring. And you'll tell by the book, monitoring and measuring is the key to anything. First of all, asking the right questions is the first thing, but having the right tools to measure what we are doing with the right objectives, whether strategy, whether it's market. If we don't have that, you're not going to know if it's good or not. And that's what I see all the time, is they've got all these great ideas, but if we don't put the customer first and understanding what they want and actually have a way of measuring based on what we want out of it, then we're just going to go around in circles. So I try to implement a framework around that, so that every time they want to add a new product or change the service, we always put those questions first before we even move forward.
You talked about, well, in fact, actually, people that are listening right now, you might be on the podcast. Welcome, by the way. Sandy was holding up an iPhone, if you were curious as to what she was talking about at one point.
I always forget.
But I'm very, very grateful for our listeners. You talked about ensuring that you understand the customer and know the customer. And what's really interesting, I'm currently reading a book, Rory Sutherland, who wrote Alchemy, and what's fascinating is even the customer doesn't actually know what they want, or certainly they can't explain it, because a lot of it is psychological. So it's so important for a business to understand the customer, but it's also so important for a business to understand and recognize that the customer doesn't always know exactly why or what they want either.
Well, Apple are a great example. Apple is, I in my book, I don't use a lot of big corporates for examples, because I try to make the book more relatable to an SME, but occasionally I did. And Apple is the perfect example of that. The whole iPhone thing, having a computer on a phone, they created that need. They created that want. We didn't know that we wanted that. And if you can do that, but you can do that by understanding who you're trying to sell to and create that vision. We were talking before we were on the show about the power of storytelling and creating an idea, a vision of what people might want. We get influenced by people and stories, and like, oh, how can I have a bit of that? And if you can create that, that makes you USP, that makes you unique, is that if you can create that ideal, situation that the client might want, that will set you apart, as opposed to trying to fit in with what is currently the trend. You're going to go ahead, but that takes skill and time to do that. But if you can do that, that will set you apart from everybody else. But Apple's a great example of that.
Yeah, for sure. In chapter 2, leadership, you talk about the role of strong leadership in driving business success. Can you share some of the strategies for creating effective leadership within an organization?
So obviously there's quite a few, but for me, my top three would be communicating company goals and keeping them updated, but don't over communicate. Too many people either over communicate and people will switch off, or they don't communicate enough. It's trying to find the right balance to suit your organizations, but keep them on board about what's going on. The companies, like I said before, will have targets, ambitions. We want to get this amount of growth. We want this sector, whatever it is, but don't keep the staff involved in where progress is going or where they're not going, and get them to come up with solutions. So if you're not meeting your targets, get the staff to come up with, why do you think we're not getting there? You guys are the ones who are doing the work. Are we not resourcing it? Or was this target impossible? That is one thing. Setting measurable goals and making them realistic. The amount of times I've seen people have like OKRs or really hard ones and not demonstrating that they don't understand what the staff go through. If you're going to set goals, personal objectives, company objectives, make them realistic. Don't make them too easy, because then people won't put in the effort, but make them a little bit challenging, but not too much. When it's too impossible, and I've seen some of them going, you really thought you were going to be able to do that? It's going to cause a lot of negative reaction from the staff. Staff are not going to react to it. So make it realistic, because it'll demonstrate you understand their role and the complexity of what they've got to do. And the last one I would say, because like I said, there's a few things, is provide training for newly promoted managers. I see a lot of people who get promoted because they're good at a job, but doesn't mean they're good at managing people. It's two separate skill sets. And unfortunately, I've seen over the years that people get promoted for doing a good job, but don't get the support they need, whether it's mentorship, training, whatever it is, supporting them in that transition, because they're not going to be doing that job anymore. They're going to be focusing on supporting that. For me, is a great sign of leadership, because it means that you understand their weaknesses. And, not everybody. Yeah, some listeners might say, but I was good at, I know there's always a small percentage that naturally fall into the manager role, but there's a lot that don't. And if you can support them in that transition, for me, it's a good sign for all the staff that you are always there to support them in their personal growth, because it is all part of personal growth.
Yeah, and for anyone watching or listening right now, I mean, if you can't argue, you can't argue with that, can you? There's some very simple, practical steps here, but the question is, are you implementing that within your business, and how well are you implementing that? And Sandy has ultimately got a bit of a roadmap here for you, making it very simple on all the things that you need to be considering. I want to get into the marketing strategy, and so you talk about marketing strategy. You also talk about building strategic partnerships. Let's focus on some of the key elements of an effective marketing strategy that you outline in the book, and how businesses ensure that they're targeting the right audience.
So again, there's various things. So I'll talk about two or three that I think are easy ones to do. Is first of all, market research and analysis. You need to do some market research, but the things that you're looking at is, competitive strengths, weaknesses, and threats. Those are things that are sometimes obvious through, word of mouth kind of research, identifying what people are good at. Like if you look at basketball players, Jordan and Shaquille O'Neal, they knew each other's weaknesses and strengths, and they pushed themselves. If we know what don't look at competitors as a negative, look at them as a positive, because there are things that you're going to be stronger at and things that you're not. So work on the nots so you can go above. Because what I see a lot of people do, a lot of businesses do, is that they become complacent. They know they're really good at something, but they stay there. Your role is, if you want to get above, is actually how can you go above that? So doing market research is important. Finding the right people with the right skills to do it. That's the thing, is you have to find someone who's good at it. Don't just, I couldn't do it to the level that it needs to be, but if you find the right person, they know how to do that. Smart goals, set measurable. Again, it's always about what is it that you want from it. And so many people do not know what they want from it. they'll say, oh, we want to make more money. Well, that's not enough. You have to put it more practical. Again, get the Lego pieces, write them down, and focus on what they are. And if you cannot measure what you're trying to do, then don't do it. Just don't, because you're not gonna learn from it. So whatever thing you do when it comes to marketing, make sure you can measure it with a report, with numbers, with something, so that you can look back and go, okay, did it work or did it not work? Why didn't it work? If it doesn't work, it's great that it didn't work, because you'll learn from it. We only learn from our mistakes. So for me, mistakes are a good thing. Don't look at it as a negative. So for me, if you can't measure it, don't do it. And the last one I would say is partnerships and collaboration. I think too many people look at partnerships as a negative, as in, what if they're going to take my client away, or what, that kind of worry of but actually, what positives can you get from it? When we are absolutely inundated with marketing and posts and all that, if we partner with the right person or with your organization, you're going to have such a broader reach with hardly any effort, if that makes any sense. And it's your opportunity to enter the room and show what you're good at. And there's so many, big corporates do partnerships all the time because they see the benefit. They don't see the negative. So if you do partnerships, and obviously small businesses, they really struggle to figure out how to do that. And it's really looking at, what are you weak at? And is there anybody next, around you that you trust who might be, for example, I might be a company that manufactures product, and our warehouse system just doesn't work. We're really, delay. But if I partner with a dispatch center who does this for loads of companies, that works. And it helps both ways. So for me, focusing on partnerships in a practical way, doing small steps, because it is quite a big, in small steps, it does work. And there's examples in the book that talks about that.
Yeah. I mean, you just mentioned some big brands do it. Walkers and Pepsi are doing it right now for the Euros, two huge brands, but yeah, doing that partnership. And what I found with a lot of small businesses is there's so many opportunities out there, but some of them just either haven't thought about partnerships or don't have the confidence, feel that they're not going to add enough value to form a partnership. And I challenge you, just like Sandy is right now, in terms of the power of a partnership and the amount of value that you can bring if you choose and find the right partnership. And I was laughing at SMART goals, by the way, because a lot of the marketing strategy that I do and the workshops that I do I do a LinkedIn workshop, and one of the first things that I say is, actually, what is it you're wanting to achieve from LinkedIn? And they all say the same thing, more money, more contacts, more clients. But if you go in to LinkedIn as with a marketing strategy of, I just want more business, it's never going to work. So you've got to have something very specific, measurable, easy to achieve, attainable, that SMART objective, and so focused and targeted.
Yeah, and the thing is, like for me, I mean, I don't go LinkedIn saying I want more business. What I use LinkedIn is to educate. That is my sole purpose, is to educate. And as long as people come back to me and say, I love that post, I love that blog, I know that my purpose for LinkedIn is educating. It's not selling. I never sell on LinkedIn because it's not for me, but some people do. Like I said, it's something simple, measure. Yeah. It's boring, but it's the data. You can't lie with data. You know what I mean?
I think one of the chapters you talk about leadership, and I know we talked about that earlier, but one of the things that interested me was that some of the feedback that you've had is that's actually one of the biggest chapters that gets people to reflect. Just tell me some of the stories that you've heard already about what some of the MDs that have been reading this have said about that leadership section.
Yeah, so what they've said is they didn't realize that because they're so busy trying to grow the business, more money, bigger turnout, that actually they've not focused on the stuff that has to be done before, which is the foundations of the people and the culture, because they're so busy chasing the next contract or the next tender or whatever. And what it's done, it's made them reflect on how they are as a leader and an MD, because obviously anyone can be an MD, but doesn't mean you're a leader. It's two separate things. And to be a leader means you have self-awareness of your role as part of the team. You are there giving the vision and the drive to the people within your team. They're not going to put as much energy in your business if you do not acknowledge their role in all that. And so, and one guy said to me, I saw myself as a leader because I was the MD, but actually reading the book, I've done none of that. Yes, they've all got good pay, but as a leader for what it's meant to be, I've not done that. So he's now going to go through the workbook area to change, add the mission statement that actually means something. In the book, I talk about mission, vision, and so on. A lot of these are fluffy words for a lot of people, but actually it's a statement that says, this is how we are. But if the MD does not behave in that way or does not demonstrate through their actions, no one's going to buy into it. So their actions actually say a lot. And so, yeah, so that was kind of an interesting, I wasn't expecting that one to be so brought up, is the leadership bit. It is about self-reflection. I was saying to you before, I self-reflect how I was last year, the year before, because if we don't, we're never going to learn anything from how to be a better version of ourselves for next time, for the next year. We need to give ourselves purpose, even as a leader. So yeah, that was an interesting reaction to the book, is a leadership bit.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? How it's only until you start reading something or listening to something that you actually start reflecting, and reflection is so important. You believe strongly in storytelling, which in marketing, I think marketing, a lot of it is around storytelling. What's your thoughts on storytelling and how important that is?
So for me, the biggest challenge in the business is change management, without a shadow of a doubt. Is when you're introducing change to people don't like that. They see it as a negative, because that's, I'm familiar with something, whether it's a process or a procedure, that is how I know. And when you change something, people are like, oh my God, what does that mean? They really go into the negative. They don't see change as a positive. And as a whole, storytelling is the easiest way to get people to buy in, because you're bringing them along. You're putting purpose into what you're doing. And, it's so key to, everyone talks about storytelling when it comes to marketing, which is obviously, narrative marketing, etc. But if you use stories to communicate why you're changing something, you're naturally bringing people into your world as to why you're doing it. You're not doing it because the MD decided we're going to do something, or the office manager decided on a whim. But too many people make changes without really communicating it. And just telling people why you're changing it doesn't work, but bringing a story element does. And unfortunately, when I use the word storytelling, people think it's a fluff term because it's very soft. But like the ISO, it's just a framework of communication. And one book that I tell a lot of my clients to read is Build a Story Brand book by Donald Miller.
Great book, great book.
He, plus the research that he's done with Dr. J.J. Peterson about storytelling and the framework, it is perfect for SMEs. It really is. And it's not just a corporate thing, storytelling. And so I try to help my clients use that framework to communicate change. And it does take time and practice. The first time it might not work, but as you go and get used to it, it does actually work, because people understand and they will buy into it.
Sandy, we're coming to the end here. There's so much I could be talking about. If you had to summarize the book, what would you think are the sort of top 3 takeaways that you really hope readers are gonna get and take away from this? What would be your top 3 takeaways?
I would say the first one is, think of your top 3 areas that you want to focus on. Our brain cannot cope with more. I mean, the book has a lot of topics, but prioritize the top 3 and focus on those top 3, and don't get distracted by everything else. Again, use Lego to visualize those 3 things. So whether you put a word in each Lego block just to kind of focus it, right, I'm going to focus on this one. The other one is bring people along, talk to your staff. They're the ones who do the work. Guess what? They'll have great ideas. So collaborating with your staff, with your teams, bringing them along just makes things better. It really does. And the last one is self-reflection. I can't say how long. Self-reflection, whether you're the manager or the MD or the leader, self-reflection of where you are versus what you're doing with your team does actually have a big impact. So for me, those 3. Can I add another one? Sorry. Is communication, understanding how to communicate with your staff. Because unfortunately, there's a lot of different types of people who process information differently. So understanding the intricacies of different people, with whether they have ADHD, dyslexia, there's a lot of ways people learn. And knowing what works for each member of staff as a whole does help you ensure that whatever you do moving forward does get through to people. Sorry, I had to add that.
Well, no, we can have 4 takeaways. I'm just wondering if you've got what the next exciting thing you've got coming up, because you've spent so long on this book. I'm just wondering if what the next thing for you is, if you've already set your own SMART objective, or if it's back to focusing on the business. What's next?
One thing I'd love to do, and I'm planning it for the next 12 months, is I want to go into businesses and guide them through some of these principles. Because even though, it is very practical, sometimes people do struggle to interpret that into their own business, because guess what? They're busy doing stuff. So I've targeted myself to work with businesses, do workshops, and actually go through some of these and make it where they can ask questions, because we learn by asking questions. And so that's kind of where I'm focusing on, because I really do believe in my book. It is what I do, and I have done in the last 8 years, and I know it's worked. So I kind of want to expand it to actually make it into a workshop with people, so they can air out their worries and their struggles, and use my dyslexic problem-solving skills to help them through that process.
I love this. For listeners and viewers right now wanting to grab the book, where should they be going?
So they can get it on any Amazon platform, or my kids think this is funny, if you want a signed copy, you can buy directly from my website, because apparently that's very popular. So yeah, if you want a signed copy, you get it from myself on my website, and you'll get a signed copy. So
we'll put the links in the show notes. I highly recommend you buy this book and read it, and start implementing some of these practical tips into your business. They're so actionable. I like the word how you called it a workbook, because it is a book that you can literally work through. And then I think it's about thinking about whether you should be engaging with somebody to help you actually through this and start focusing on your business. Sandy, thank you so much for joining the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure. We could have talked for much more. We've not even, there's so much we've not covered away from the book as well. But I am really thankful. I'm thankful for you listening and watching as well. So thanks for joining us. Please do subscribe. Let us know what you think. Give us feedback. And I'm sure that Sandy is up for answering questions as well afterwards. Best place to find you online, is it LinkedIn or
LinkedIn is where I'm always at, but my website does have a contact sheet. But yeah, I'm happy to give my email address on the notes afterwards if anyone wants to get in touch directly.
Fantastic. Listen, this has been Jonny Ross Fractional CMO with Sandy Domingos-Shipley with her new book, Building a World-Class Business. Go out there, buy it, and start changing your business today. Thank you so much, Sandy. We'll see you all soon. Take care.
Thanks a lot, Jonny. Bye. Have a great day.